Thank you all for joining us for the Tracking and Formatting with Microsoft Word, How to Use Styles and Track Changes Effectively workshop. Joining us today is Dr. Jessica Nave-Blodgett, who has a Ph.D. in Auditory Cognitive Psychology. I'm going to hand it over to her to get us started.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming today. And thank you again for the invitation. As he said, Jessica Nave-Blodgett. I graduated from UNLV in 2020 with a degree from, at the time, the Department of Psychology. It's now the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences. And I'm excited to hopefully share some tips, tricks, and maybe teach you something about styles in Microsoft Word and track changes in Microsoft Word, which are two tools that you can absolutely use to more effectively and efficiently complete your thesis and dissertation projects, and really any writing project, especially those where you're going to be getting a lot of feedback or be working in co-authored situations. So let me share my screen and give me have patience with me as I just make sure that the actual thing is displaying. So everybody should be able to see my slides at this point.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So I do want to mention I can't really see chat while I'm presenting, just simply because of the way this is set up. So if you have a question, please, that you don't think I'm going to get to, then please feel free to say something, or but I can't monitor chat. And then I'm going to do my best. I have a bad tendency to run long, but I'm going to do my best to make sure there's time at the end for questions. So, all right, without further ado, I will get us started. So just as a sort of roadmap, I'm going to start out by going over styles in Microsoft Word. What are they? Why should I use them? How can I get started? And some sort of tips for effectively using styles within your document. I want to mention it's not a deep dive into styles, because that could be an entire workshop on its own, but I want to introduce you to styles because there's something that you can use then later in with track changes to really effectively edit and produce your documents, especially the thesis and dissertation. And then we'll get into the meat of track changes. If you've never used track changes before, this starts from the beginning and works its way up. If you're already a user of track changes, hopefully I'll teach you something new, but maybe it'll just be a review. And then finally, just anytime we have left at the end, I open the floor to questions. So starting with styles. Styles are basically a way to format multiple sections of your document all in one go. Because the way that Microsoft Word is coded, everything is a paragraph. Even your headings, your chapter titles, subheadings, all of those, Microsoft Word considers those to be paragraphs. And when you're creating your documents, there's the tendency to want to try to format everything individually. And, for a really short document, that's not a problem. But once you're getting into thesis and dissertation land, where you've got 30-page, 50-page, 70, 150-page documents, if you're doing all your formatting by hand, that can get, A, it can be very time intensive, and B, you can start making mistakes or having inconsistent formatting. Styles allows you to format every particular paragraph type the exact same way. So it also assists you in creating table of contents. It pretty much requires styles if you're going to create a linked table of contents, which is required per the Graduate College for your thesis and dissertation formatting for when you submit it. Your list of figures, your list of tables, and really it's just a way for you, once you pass the learning curve, to just ensure a consistent visual appearance in your document so everything looks uniform based on what type of information is in the document. So styles, you can think of them as formatting instructions, kind of like a snippet of code that Word will apply to particular parts of your document once you tell Word, this is what this is. When you open a blank document, everything is just going to be in that default normal style. Styles are applied to each paragraph, and like I said, anything after you press the enter button, that is considered a paragraph. There are three types of styles, and we'll get into them. They're paragraph styles, And that's going to include your line and paragraph formatting. So like, is it double spaced? Is it single spaced? How much space before the paragraph? How much space after the paragraph? Is it a hanging indent, like in some reference lists? Is it a, always a half-inch indent? Is it always a double indent or something like that? Then there are character styles, which can be applied to individual words or individual letters in a word throughout a document. And then there are finally linked styles, which can be applied, which are actually, they can be either paragraph or character, or they can be a combination of both. And those will definitely come in when you're creating your table of contents. So like I was intimating before, why should you use styles? Besides the fact that you're going to actually have to use styles when you format your thesis and dissertation for submission to the grad college, start using it before you're at that point. Like, start using it right when you're creating the document, because it really helps you ensure that your documents have consistent formatting. It saves you time so that you're not going and having to manually check or manually apply that every figure is 12-point Times New Roman font with a bold at the beginning and not bold after that. It allows you to create these linked elements, such as your table of contents. And then, as we'll get into later, it actually lets you create a living outline of your document based on your headings that you can then use to wholesale reorder elements of text. So if you realize that this part of this subheading of the method section, the materials should go after participants, but you wrote it before participants, you can simply use the styles and the heading to like wholesale move that, but we'll get to that later. And also it ensures that, oh, I think I did see a chat thing. I will be sharing this. I need to email it to the grad college, but I will be emailing the copy of this PowerPoint to everyone, or to the grad college for the grad college to disseminate to everybody. So you will get a copy of this PowerPoint, I promise. And then also numbered items. So, say you have a 150-page paper, sometimes using styles will ensure that all of your numbers are ordered correctly throughout the document if you have multiple ordered lists that start and stop with other breaks in between them. All right, so how to get started with styles. When you open up a fresh new document in Microsoft Word, it's going to be assigned to this normal style by default. Where do I find this? And I should mention, so all of my screenshots are taken from, I think it's now called Microsoft 365. It's going to be very similar to what was previously called Office 365. It'll be very similar to, I think it was like Word 2019 and 2017. There are going to be slight stylistic differences depending on the version of Microsoft Word you're using, but overall, you should be able to follow similar instructions or apply what you're learning here to any previous version of Word. Maybe Word 2003 would be a stretch. I shouldn't promise every version. But anyway, so every paragraph you type is assigned to this normal style by default. So to find out what a style looks like, you can, put your cursor inside a paragraph and then take your mouse and hover it over top of a different style, and it will change what that paragraph looks like. So in my little visual right here, you can see my chapter, which is actually a chapter title style. And then, the music is a ubiquitous form of auditory communication. That is in your normal style. If you want to see formatting, some people prefer to write actually with the formatting term visible at all times. Some people don't, I don't, but you can always click the Pilcrow button, which I've highlighted or kind of put a box around, to see the formatting in your document. If you do that, you'll see spaces as little dots, you'll see indents as little arrows, you'll see a Pilcrow mark at the end of every paragraph. And that helps you get an appreciation for what Word considers a paragraph. You can highlight text and you can assign different paragraphs, anything ended by a Pilcrow, to different styles. So it could be a heading, it could be a major heading, it could be a subheading that can usually considered heading 2, heading 3, all the way down. You can keep creating captions, whether it's a figure caption, a table caption. You can assign references to its own style, and this will help ensure that everything that is tagged a particular way, everything that's marked normal, everything that's marked a heading, they will all have the same uniform spacing, the uniform text size, font, color, anything you want. So to find the styles pane, it's in a couple different places. In a new or existing document, on your home tab, you can press the More button, which is that little downward facing arrow, to open the styles pane, which is going to open up this big floating box. It may look like this, it may look a little bit different depending on your version of Word, that will show you every available type of style in your document. Some of them may already be in use, some of them you may not be using. By default, Word always populates in normal, usually heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, title, subtitle, subtle emphasis. There's a lot of different options. So the styles pane will kind of always float slightly in front of, and you can move it around to the side of your document to see and apply different styles more than just the quick options that are there available for you in the home ribbon. So, like I said, lots of styles available even in a brand new document. So remember I talked about there are 3 main types: the paragraph, the character, and the linked. So anything that is considered a paragraph style has the Pilcrow symbol next to it. And these are applied to entire paragraphs. Anything that's considered a character style has a lowercase a next to it, and these are applied to individual words, pieces of text. They're not applied based on that Pilcrow or the entire paragraph. And then linked styles, where you have both the Pilcrow symbol and the a symbol with an underline next to it, they're often applied to tables, but anything that's going to be placed into a table of content, things like that, that is going to be considered something that is going to be a linked style. So to edit or create styles, because every document starts with the normal, and you'll see in mine, if you're a font nerd like I am, you'll see that mine is Times New Roman, and these are actually examples from my dissertation itself, because the grad college wants us to have it in Times New Roman if we're writing it in Word. But often with Word, it'll start out with a different set of formatting instructions for normal. So for you to get it to the style necessary, you will often have to modify or otherwise edit the style to get to the formatting type you want. One of the beautiful things, though, is that you can play around with this as much as you want. You can test it out, and it's very easy for you to change, and it'll update throughout the entire document. So anything that you've told Word is a normal, once you update it or modify it, it'll apply it uniformly throughout, and you can see what your document will look like in different ways. So you right-click on the style, either in the ribbon pane, and you select Modify, or if you have the styles pane up, you can click on the little down arrow or down caret and choose Modify. So you notice it's the exact same menu. You're just getting to it from different places. And that's going to be a theme throughout this. Word is very powerful. Word is full of menus. Word is full of redundancy in as much as you can do the same actions multiple different ways. Don't worry about trying to remember how to do it every single way. Just figure out a way that you remember and works for you and go for it. But if you forget, there's always more options. Once you click that Modify Style button, it will, or dialog option, it will bring up this particular table or this particular set of options. It says Modify Style. You can change the name of it. So right now we're just editing the normal, and if I wanted to call it default, or if I wanted to call it basic paragraphs or something like that, I could change the name. You could change the formatting, so you can change the font, you can change the font size, you can tell it to always be bold, always be italic, always be underlined. Automatic in this case is for the font color. So in this case, it's black. You can change the orientation or the alignment of the text. Right now it's left justified. You could change it to always be center, always be right justified, or the center justification, fully spread. You can change it to be single space, double spaced, however much as you need. You can change the amount of spacing between paragraphs. You can increase or decrease. You could change the indent level, so it's always indented a particular amount. And you always can kind of see a summary of your options chosen down near the bottom where it says font default, Times New Roman, 12 point, left, in that case, left justified, line spacing double, style, show in the styles gallery. So it kind of gives you a summary in words of everything that you've selected. So like I said, you can edit pretty much anything that you can think of. And there's actually even more options. So if you choose the format button that is down in the lower left-hand corner, then you can go on an even deeper dive. You can go deeper dive into the font. You can make things superscript or subscript. You can add strike through. You can go deeper down in the paragraph. This is where you'd add a hanging indent. Tabs, border, if you want to have particular types of text that have a frame around it, you can do that. You can change the language. So if you are if you're putting excerpts from non-English character languages, you can change the language that is being used in those paragraphs so it can have different character sets. And it can have different spelling rules so that you don't just see a line of red, a block of red squiggles because you're writing German in your dissertation, because that's part of what you're doing. So you can change that. You can change the numbering. You can change text effects. It's incredibly powerful. And what you're doing right here is you're doing one set of setup that from then on throughout the document, you can just click and it'll apply, and you don't have to remember what all your settings are, because Word has remembered them for you. And should you need to go back and later change, or you decide that, oh, I didn't want it this way, I wanted it a different way, you can once again just modify a single style, and this change will go throughout the entire document for anything of this particular style type. So you don't have to try to reformat 150 pages in your dissertation. If you create new styles, because you may need many different things for your dissertation or whatever you're doing, you can always create a new style. You can create it based on a previous style, or you can just make one up. And you're always going to be choosing this sort of A being the style symbol, and add a style or create a style. And like I said, there's multiple different places you can do it. The top one's from the style pane. The bottom one, as you can see, is from the home ribbon. So you choose in the dialog box, it's going to look very similar to the modify that I just showed you. In fact, it's almost identical. It'll just say create new instead of modify style. But just make sure, make sure that for the radio button near the bottom, that you choose the option to let it be in new documents based on this template. And that means it's something that you can take forward from here on out. So any document you create in Microsoft, in your copy of Microsoft Word, that style that you've created will be an option. So if you're creating kind of your own personal branding for how you want your documents to look, besides the thesis and dissertation, because obviously we make those how the grad college wants them to look. But if part of your personal branding or your work is actually creating this unified visual look, you can create styles that you're going to use to make sure that all of your documents going forward look like you and look like your personal branding. And then, so I talked about using styles to navigate documents. So using those headings, so like heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, once you've assigned those, Microsoft Word now recognizes them as, well, headings, and so, or headers. So now there's something that you can use to both navigate through the document quickly and to reorganize entire subsections of texts. So the navigation pane can be found from the home ribbon. Move over to where it says view. And then on the view ribbon, you check that little box that says show navigation pane. The navigation pane will then pop up. Usually by default, it's on the left-hand side. And as long as you select where it says headings, you'll actually see an outline of your document constructed from your headings. This is also what's going to appear in your table of contents when you create your table of contents. And this is why styles are important for creating that table of contents, which is part of our dissertation process and our thesis formatting process. So you can actually drag and drop headings right here on this navigation pane to rearrange the text. So if you see in mine where I have, let's see, experiment 1 method and then results and discussion, I could literally move the entire results and discussion above the method, or I could move it to another location entirely if that was what I wanted to do. And I could simply do that. I wouldn't have to go highlight and then either click and drag or copy paste, Control X, Control V. I could literally just drag through the power of headings, and it would move all the text with me. And like I said, it'll be what's shown in your table of contents. So it's both. Apparently I can see little pop-ups of chat. So it's kind of both. It's helping you visualize, but it is actually organization. So this is like the equivalent of hyperlinks, because this is sort of your hyperlink table of contents, which is created through formatting and styles, because styles tells Word what is, what's a hyperlink to a section that what's an anchor. And then you can use that to navigate through the document. So, I could click on chapter 2, it would go to chapter 2, and then it would navigate me through. And then I can also move the text because all the text is linked to that anchor as well. Let's see if I can actually get this up here. So let me see if I can show you a little bit of this. So I'm going to actually switch over to sharing a different document, just so I can give you an example of what all of this looks like. So I want to view one page. Welcome to my dissertation. And my dissertation absolutely has styles in it because it had to. So as I said, here is your navigation pane. So you navigate to view, navigation pane, and then you can see that I can literally click anywhere and it will take me to that section of my document. We've already jumped to page 52. If I jump to chapter 4 in my dissertation, we've jumped to page 140. And to sort of show you what I was talking about with styles, so right now you'll see, so I've kind of clicked in on this first paragraph, and here's the normal style. I could change the entire thing. So this is what it would look like just by mousing over. Like I said, this shows me a preview of what it would look like if I had it on title, if I had it on, oh, okay, perfect. That's a character. So I have just listeners, or I have the cursor in listeners. Emphasis is a style that applies, it's a character emphasis. So it applies only to that particular word, whereas something like chapter title is considered a paragraph, so it applies to the entire paragraph. I think caption, yep. And so you can actually see in this one, it's got the Pilcrow symbol in it. So as I mouse over it, and so you can see in real time what these things would look like, and you can kind of try out different, I don't know why that moved, try out different styles. Also, the other thing I wanted to point out, since I didn't really talk about it much, is that Word has a lot of built-in looks for its styles. And I was talking about that visual formatting. So over on the design, you can see what they call themes, which are just basically pre-formatted groups of styles that make your document look a particular way. And once again, you can mouse over them to see what it would look like, and it'll change your entire document as long as you've got everything figured out as to what it is, and you can preview what it would look like. So it's a really cool and powerful tool that once you get you get into it, it takes a little bit of time. If you don't start from the beginning, if you have to go back and post hoc apply, it takes a little bit of time. But once you get in the habit of using styles right as you're creating your documents, it saves so much time going forward. All right, switching back to PowerPoint. All right, and there we go. Moving on to track changes. So track changes in Microsoft Word is an incredibly powerful editorial tool that helps you both collect and collate feedback from your advisors, co-authors, peers that you've asked to look at your documents and give suggestions and changes, or suggested edits, comments, whatever, editorial feedback, and for you then to implement that feedback in a controlled and systematic manner. So track changes keeps this record. It displays every single type of change to your document as what we call markup. You can then choose to control how much markup you see so that you can focus on particular things. You can choose to accept or reject each of these changes. You can do it individually, you can do it en masse. And then you can also deal with editorial comments or comments that are not actual changes to the meat of your document, but might be suggestions for, improving clarity or suggestions for reorganization, or sort of like these editorial notes. You can think of them as the equivalent of like sticky notes on your old drafts. So track changes helps you both get that feedback and then manage that feedback. It keeps a record of text insertion and deletion, the moving and reordering of elements, the formatting of words, sections in the document, and any comments made on the document so that you can see what it looked like before. And also you can see what it's going to look like if you were to accept those changes. So you can kind of look back in time and you can look forward in time. It's really, really cool. And it allows you to know who made those changes, at what time they made those changes, and you can review them individually without having to incorporate them. Like I said, you can test it out. You can keep track of revisions. You can address them one set at a time based on the author. And you can always go back to, well, what did I say originally? Because track changes always has that memory of what the original document looked like in case you decide, hey, I really liked the way I had it worded before. So the first thing you need to do is you need to turn track changes on for it to have this lovely time travel power for you. So from the home ribbon, you'll want to click on the review pane, and then you will want to press that powerful button that says track changes. I don't suggest doing this while you're drafting a document to begin with. This is for that revision stage, the editorial stage, the getting feedback stage. I would not suggest having track changes on while you're just writing your draft. I think you'd probably get lost in all the formatting. But in that editorial stage, this becomes an incredibly powerful tool. So moving forward, from the time you turn that on, all edits to the document will be tracked. And also, if you're sending drafts out to people, just ask them to turn track changes on. Send it out with track changes on, and just make sure you say in your email, please leave track changes on to help me help you, or help you help me. You can also click, and I would suggest doing this, the show comments button to see all the comments in the document. Hopefully, you can encourage people to leave comments. You can always click the comments button in the upper right-hand corner to open the comments pane in Word. All right, so with track changes, it can be overwhelming, the amount of stuff you see. Because it tracks, like I said, pretty much everything that's done to the document from the time you press that button. You don't have to see it all at once. You can selectively choose what you want to see. There's something called simple markup, which kind of shows you what the document would look like with the changes, but sort of indicates where those changes are. It'll show, all markup will show you all edits and comments in the document. When you're addressing revisions from your advisors, from your thesis or dissertation committee, I would suggest looking at all markup. No markup is that sort of forward time machine where you can see what the document would look like if you had accepted every single edit made. And original shows you what the document looked like before track changes on. That is a great question. So Google Docs have track changes that work similarly to Word. I have not actually tried to see if you can import track changes into Word, or I mean import change like a track changes into Google. That's a great question. I'm not sure, but it's something you could try it out. All right, so just to sort of show you a difference between simple markup and all markup, like I said in simple markup, you can see that changes were made because there are little lines in the left-hand margin, but you're not sure what those edits were because you're just sort of seeing what it would look like and just knowing that things happen. And you can see where comments were. All markup, well, now you're actually seeing what changes are made. You can see what's being commented on. Those are the gray highlights. You can see things that have been deleted, things that have been inserted, and I'll show you what things look like when they've been moved around in a little bit. So all markup can show you a lot. It's really showing you the crossouts, the moves, the insertions, the deletions, everything. You can then further customize how you see your track changes by selectively using what are called revisions and balloons. So you can actually toggle off. You can change it so that I don't want, if you don't care if somebody like left justified your paragraph, you can unclick where it says formatting. If you don't care that somebody italicized, or like if you're not really concerned about those editorial changes, you don't have to look at them. You can choose not to look at insertion and deletions. I wouldn't suggest that for things with getting feedback from your committee, but you could do that. And then you can choose where you want to see things about balloons, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. You can also turn off and on seeing edits from particular authors. So say you've got feedback from multiple members of your committee, you can choose to just look at one person at a time. So I don't know. I've never used Grammarly so that is a great question. I do not know the answer to that. The question was, does this include edits from Grammarly? I don't think those. So I think if you have, this is just me hypothesizing. If you have Grammarly installed as a plugin and it makes a suggestion once you have like turned track changes on, and I believe you right click and you accept or you reject, much like you do with like spelling changes and things like that, and you take the suggested change, I think it would show up as a track change, but it would show up as you doing it, not as Grammarly doing it, because ultimately you were the one to implement it, if that's the way Grammarly works. I can't speak fully to it, but that's my hypothesis. So yeah, markup inline or balloons on the side. So this is the kind of difference between only formatting and balloons. So here you see, just that, okay, the indent was changed on that particular markup. And you can see that this is a lot of markup. This was like stuff added in. Whereas if it says show all revisions and balloons, that's going to be a lot of stuff in your right-hand margin. And it actually kind of gets a little complicated to read at times. I would only suggest having that set up like that once you've dealt with a lot. Usually it's better to only have, personally, this is my personal preference, better to have only formatting in balloons, and the rest of it is shown in line. All right, so with track changes, the color of the changes is based on the author, but the formatting of the changes is uniform based on the type of change. So if you are adding text in, once you have track changes enabled, you just place your cursor, you type, and then new text will display with an underline. The color may change if you've got like 5 people in the document and they're all doing it. The colors will change, but new text will always be with an underline unless you change it. If you delete text, then it will show it as a strike through. So it won't necessarily change where other stuff is, but all you just do is like you would delete text from a regular document. You'd either, just press backspace or press delete or highlight it and do so, and it'll display with a strike through. If you are moving text, whether you highlight, generally speaking for this one gets a little funky. Sometimes it'll work with copy paste, but usually it works best with drag and drop, where you highlight and then you physically click and drag the text to the new location. In that case, the text that was moved will get a double strike through, and the text in the new location will get a double underline to show that it's different than just added text or deleted text, that this was text that was already in the document but has been moved from one location to another. I will show you an example again from back from the vaults, as they might say, of a document from 2017, I believe, that I wrote. Where'd my WebEx go? Share, please. Always sing at technology. It makes it work so much better. So here's an example of something I wrote back in 2017 that my advisors had a lot of feedback on. It ultimately became the introduction to one of the papers in my dissertation, but this was a very, very early draft. So right now, as I showed you from the home, you go to review, because track changes is a type of editorial review, and you would have track changes enabled. And so right now I'm showing you what simple markup looks like. All markup, all of a sudden we can see a lot more going on. So now you can see the deletions. Now you can see the additions. I'm not sure I've got any moves. And then you can see comments. So all of this is visible under all markup. And when I told you about how to show in balloons or in line, so I said show only formatting in balloons. So if I showed revisions in balloons, all of a sudden now it gets the deletions move. So if you notice, the added text stays, but the deleted text moves over into the balloons. And you kind of, if you have as many edits as I did in this particular document, you kind of lose track of what's going on. So this is why when you have a lot of changes, I really don't suggest showing all revisions in balloons. I would suggest showing only formatting. And then just to show, and then because I talked about it, no markup, this is what it would look like if all the track changes were accepted. And the original is what I wrote originally before before people came in and edited. My advisors gave me feedback. So I can go back to see what I wrote originally if I lost track. I can see what it looks like if I wanted to accept every change as is. If I wanted to have just sort of a much clearer look of, well, this is what it looks like, and this is what is mine versus what my advisors did, I would use simple markup. But generally speaking, when you're deep in like the editorial stage where you're getting feedback and you're making substantive changes to your documents, I really suggest being in the all markup and really seeing what's going on. Great. Next slide. Great. So if you want to get fancy, you can change what track, you could toss out everything I just said about how track changes looks, and you can change colors, you can change formatting, you can change anything you want. So if you're in situations where really you're only going to be getting feedback from one individual, that might be a situation where you actually want to change the color of insertions and deletions and things like that based on what type of feedback they are, simply because you're really only getting feedback from one person. But if you're going to be getting feedback from multiple people, I really suggest leaving it a color. But just so that you know it's here, you click that more button, you go to advanced options, and you can play with as many, you can customize track changes to your heart's desire. And you can also customize what changes are tracked or not, even deeper than what was shown previously. All right, so when it comes to accepting and rejecting changes, you can do them all at once or you can do them individually. So individually, you can choose to right-click on each change and choose accept or reject. So in this case, it says move rather than change. You can do that. Or up through that menu, that ribbon, you can click on the accept button and you can accept and move to the next change. So this will actually jump you through the document. If you clicked accept this change, it would just accept it and leave your cursor there. And then also you can choose to accept all changes or accept all changes and stop tracking. I would only suggest doing this if you're at the end stage and you've already reviewed everything and you just want to make sure that you've hit every change that you've seen. I don't suggest doing this at the beginning because it may seem easier, but then you end up with a document that may not actually make sense. So comments are something that I've kind of touched on. They're not truly part of track changes, but they're often used in conjunction because they help you understand what other people's mind, what was going on in their mind when they made a track change, why they were thinking particular things. So they're editorial notes. They're best when you can explain why you suggest a particular edit or say, you know, I'm having difficulty understanding this particular point, or maybe you should move, you know, I suggest moving this paragraph to a different section or splitting it into 2 paragraphs. So they're for more longer editorial changes where you don't want to do, where maybe your advisor isn't implementing the feedback, but is giving you those suggestions. They can also be parenthetical statements. They can be notes to yourself that you can use to say, pick back up here, or this is where I stopped in the document. You can have notes about your workflow, about sources. So there are multiple ways, like I said, to add comments. You can click a new comment button in the review pane. You can right click wherever your cursor is and choose to add a new comment. I am a keyboard shortcuts gal. I love Control-Alt-M. It's one of those muscle memory things for me. I make comments in documents all day long. Control-Alt-M, boom, your cursor's already right there in the document. And what's being commented on is either whatever you had highlighted or whatever word you had your cursor in. So you can reply to comments. They can actually become kind of like forum threads almost. So you can reply directly by clicking in the comment itself where it says reply. You can right click if it's a really, really big comment and you're not sure which one. You can right click and choose go to comment or reply to the comment. And you'll see that it creates a sort of threaded view where each one will be indented as it's replying to the previous comment. So it'll be nested in there. So if you've addressed a comment, so say your advisor suggests that you split a paragraph into 2 paragraphs and then flesh them out or something like that, you can choose to resolve that comment rather than deleting it so that you keep a kind of running tally of what you've done and how much you have left to do. Okay, check box. I have, you know, I did what my advisor suggested. I'm going to resolve this. I would talk with your advisor or whoever is giving you feedback ahead of time and find out, and this kind of goes to later, if they, when you send the draft back, if they want to have the comments left in but resolved, or if they want a totally clean draft where all comments have both been resolved and deleted. Find that out ahead of time. Just have that conversation, little two-minute conversation. But while you're working, it helps to know, boom, I've done that one. You can always resolve the comment from the right click option. There's multiple ways, like everything, just click around, see what happens in your particular version of Word. So it flags it as resolved, which is something for the reviewing pane, which I'll go over in a moment. And you can then later delete all resolved comments. So that way you know that you've only deleted out comments that you've dealt with. So like I said, there you can delete comments in several ways. From that review, you can delete individual comments, you can delete all of them, or like I talked about, you can delete all your resolved comments. So you can just say, okay, you know, I've been working on this for a couple days, I've resolved at least a bunch of these comments, let me delete them out so I can see what I have left to do. And then from the review menu ribbon, it's, like I said, Word, there's multiple ways to do every single thing. I'm going a little faster at this point because I want to make sure that you have time for questions. And like I said, I will absolutely be giving you these slides. So the revisions pane is quite useful. It shows all comments and edits that are selected in show markup. So as long as you're looking at insertions, deletions, formattings, everything like that, it will show you all of them. It can also filter if you're only looking from a particular author. It'll show you how many revisions are left from that author, how many comments are left from that author. So next to track changes, there's that little option that says reviewing pane. You can either have it vertical and you can have it on the left or the right hand side of the screen, whatever your preference, or you can have it horizontal, so you can have it either on the top or the bottom. That's really just personal preference. So it can help you with finding specific edits because it kind of lets you just read the edits themselves, devoid of the text. So if you remember, I had that one edit or that one comment, it helps you find it really quickly. Say you have like 90 revisions, but it's a 150-page document. This way you don't have to scroll down and look. You can just scroll through the revisions pane. And it can also just sort of let you know how many edits are left to address within a document. All right. So here are some hard-won tips. Obviously, your mileage may vary. Do the method that works for you. But my suggestions, learn through experience. When you receive a draft with feedback, where it's someone that you like really need to, whether it's co-authors, advisors, thesis committee, dissertation committee, save an archive version before you start working. And then you create a clean copy, save a new copy that has like your date stamp and your initials so that you can then start working. But you can always look back and say, what were all of the things they wanted me to address, so that by the end you can go, did I actually hit everything? Have that copy. That's very, very useful. Choose a strategy, and this is going to be up to you for addressing your big picture edits versus your line item edits. Because everybody gets the little insertions and deletions, but then you'll also get the feedback about reorganize or, add in a literature review section about XYZ. Those are big picture comments. Those are more difficult to address than simply accepting or rejecting line item, additions, deletions, that sort of thing. And think forward. If there are a couple line item edits, but then your advisor also comments, I suggest removing this section, or I suggest splitting this apart into 2 or 3 different sections, then it's not worth addressing the line items because they're going to be subsumed by the bigger picture change. When you have multiple co-authors, like a multi-author paper situation, or like your dissertation committee, sometimes it really does make sense to just go person by person and address their edits individually. Track changes lets you filter on that. Use that revisions pane, because sometimes it feels like a slog. Sometimes it feels like you're not making any progress, and you can always look at that number. And as long as that number is ticking down of you are addressing comments and edits and revisions, then it's something qualitative or quantitative that you can hang on to, not just qualitative, because qualitatively sometimes this feels really hard. Use styles. So I talked about how you can use headings and then use them to reorganize text. So if your advisor said, hey, participants needs to go above methods, boom, you just use styles to just reorder that and deal with a comment all in one go. And you can always use the navigation pane to navigate around. Remember, ultimately, this is your paper, this is your dissertation, this is your thesis. If you are the primary author, you do not have to accept every single change. However, with great power comes great responsibility. Choose your battles. There are times when just be selective. Recognize that you're not a robot, you're not an automaton. You don't have to accept every change, but when you choose not to, have a reason why. And maybe it's a style, maybe it's a little stylistic thing, and that's fine. Maybe it's a big thing and you need to have a discussion with your advisor about that. But just recognize that you're not a robot, and it's not your job to just check off every single one of these. You're both receiving editorial feedback, but you are still the author and you're still in editorial control position. This one helped me a lot when I would receive, because writing is personal and sometimes the feedback can hurt. Always, if you can, it's when like big draft feedback, go get a good night's sleep between reading it and starting to address it, because that night's sleep will give you a lot of emotional distance and mental clarity. And you deserve it. And you'll usually find in the light of day the next morning that the edits actually aren't as bad as you felt. And then finally, just make sure, and this is that conversation with your advisors, try to give them a clean copy of the draft. Try to make sure, go through every edit's been accepted, all comments have been deleted. If that's what your advisor prefers, that's what my advisors preferred, is like once you were done and it was a substantive new draft, it should be clean as it goes to them. Some advisors may want to see like the resolved comments. Just make sure you have that conversation, but otherwise have a clean draft saved as you send it, or right before what you send to your co-authors. So just to wrap up, styles and track changes, really powerful features. A lot of people are scared because they seem really complicated, but I promise you they're not that hard. You will pick them up quickly and they will make your life easier. They will make your documents look pretty, and they will, and it's also necessary for you to actually submit your thesis or dissertation. Track changes makes the work of getting feedback from multiple sources much easier. And just in general, these will help make your lives easier if you invest a little bit of time in learning how to use them. So that's all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen, and I will open up the floor to any questions.
You can type the questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and do it that way too, whatever you feel comfortable. Thank you so much, Dr. Nave-Blodgett.
You're welcome. I hope everybody at least got one thing out of it. You know, I will feel satisfied if everybody learned at least one thing today.
I'm sure we all did. Any other thoughts before we close it off?
Just that by being here at the Grad Rebel Writing Bootcamp, you are making a huge step forward, and you should be proud of yourself. And that writing is a skill, and like any skill, it's difficult when you get started, but you get better with time. And just focus on doing the best you can, because no one can ever ask anything more than the best you can do in that moment. And just believe in yourself. You can do this. I know you can do this. I did it. You can do it too. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and for providing us with such helpful advice and tips. And thanks to our participants for being here today and joining us. We will meet you back over at Remo. We'll be posting this workshop, as I said before, at the Graduate College YouTube channel for your reference. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Also, make sure to send the slides.
Oh, thank you.